Okay. So we deal of architecture houses on perhaps a slightly different scale. So I want to say, is luxury immoral? It's very different to perhaps housing that we've seen this morning. And when we traditionally think of luxury, we think of that great comfort, something that's, we don't perhaps need, but it's really nice to have. I think that we have issues about how we identify with luxury today, with aesthetic concerns or environmental concern, energy use, all of those things, and it becomes how we want to live. And I think that you see lots of celebrities that are turning away from wearing the really branded stuff. They want quiet stuff that is more subtle. And when it comes to the architecture around London, we see a lot of these kind of inflated homes in Surrey that are just big and have lots of stuff to them. And it's not anything that is really architecture. It's just a blown up floor plan, and then we stick a few columns on it, and that's supposed to make us happy. So we see a real shift away from this opulence in our clients to something I call a quiet luxury. And what really drives this? We have this idea of digital deluge. Is that coming up? That I've stolen this from Jim Quick, who wrote a book. We consume more data in one day that someone did in the 15th century in one day. Clients are paralyzed by endless options. There is, Pinterest boards, Instagram, all these kind of websites. How can we as architects edit that information and filter and not add more noise? There is digital distraction. We have constant pinging on mobile phones, notifications. We pick up our phones 100 times a day to check things. We are overstimulated. And also our house, fridges ping and everything like this all the time if we have it open for more than 10 seconds. How can we create architecture spaces that restore spaces, calm and so on, with simplicity? We have digital dementia. We're outsourcing memory to our phones. We don't remember people's phone numbers. We don't remember people's birthdays because we've got devices that do that. So how can we somehow bring back some form of clarity when we remember things? And then we have, that digital deduction where we just ask the internet, or we ask ChatGPT what it's all about, and it tells us. So we don't have to think deeply anymore. Then we had this little fellow that came along a few years ago, and it kind of really changed how we used our houses, what we needed our houses to do, and people really started to question how they lived. We then have these two fellows who add anxiety to people about geopolitical and environmental concerns. All of these things, they really kind of, we're looking for things that are perhaps more permanent and calm. Bling dates very quickly. We want quiet things that last. We call this a quiet luxury. So a client asks us for this. Time is important. How do we choose to spend our time? Who do we do with connection? Connection with family, friends, connection with ourselves, health and connection health-wise, well-being. We see people really asking for how health can be incorporated, whether it's wellness or gyms or just materiality. Privacy becomes really important for our clients, and craft. And this kind of starts feedback to AI as well, when we have that digital deduction, when we can get really quick answers and quick fixes. People are looking in crafted responses in experience where someone who has done this for a while, it's actually an opinion that matters rather than just digital deduction. Simplicity, people, they want simple. More is not better anymore, And they want that human touch. It's something that becomes really, really important. And we also have lots of clients that ask for legacy in their projects. And it can be that they want to build something. And families grow up and the generation shifts where children today perhaps won't have the same opportunities as baby boomers. They won't be able to build houses and buy houses. So the parents are creating houses where the children can come back to with grandchildren or for birthdays or for weddings or holiday homes. And it becomes something that they can build a family around. And finally, cultural sensitivity. People are more aware of how their houses and what it says about them, how it sits in society. And I wanted to talk a little bit of how we design for this. I'm going to swift through 3 projects. But there was a book written a few years ago by a British author called Greg McKeown. It's called Essentialism. And the premise is that if you apply your energy in many directions, you don't get very far. But if you can channel it in one direction, you can make a lot of things happen. And you can do the same thing about architecture. So how can we focus on getting the right things done? So we've got to do that by understanding what it is we're doing. That's having conversations with clients and really understanding the brief and understanding them, spending time with them. And then we iterate. We just iterate. We do options and options, and we work around it. And then when we've done that, we edit, and we're trying to edit out what's not necessary, anything that's superfluous. If we can get rid of that, what we can then do is elevate what's left. And it means much more than. Instead of having all of that attention pulling in all different directions. So we have clients, the luxury, people are asking to go away from the bling, the luxury in objects. And instead, they're searching for a quiet luxury, which is luxury in spaces. This is a picture from the principal bedroom in a house we've done in Barcelona, and which is the first project I'm going to talk about quickly. So this sits in the hills just outside Barcelona. And it's a 2-story house, but it sits on a hill, so it kind of sits into the land. And you basically live on this platform. We have an infinity pool that sits on the edge. And we have some structural walls at the back of it. And we have a bedroom. The rest of it is an open plan. And we introduce just the one column that's holding up the roof. We then have a glass wall that encloses that space, and we have some freestanding pieces in there like a kitchen and a courtyard with a tree, and then it's a big roof that sits over it. That managed to shade and provide really big overhangs to protect and create a continuation between inside and outside. So we have essentially a 1-bedroom penthouse apartment, if you so like, which is an open space. I haven't got a pointer with me, but you're coming in at the top, you've got a courtyard, we've got a kitchen that sits as a free object behind, which is TV, and then you got living space to the front. The glass walls open up completely, and you then only have the one column that holds up that roof. On the lower ground floor, there is bedrooms and a garage. And that whole process of editing and iterations comes down to that, where we get rid of anything that's not needed, and you're left with what's important. And this, it was about the view. And you got the roof plane and the floor plane. We worked very hard to engineer this, to create that 6-meter cantilever on the roof. So we cast this concrete roof, and it was actually pre-cambered, so the formwork was sitting upwards, and when we took it down, the roof just leveled down to be perfectly horizontal. The main space, and this is from the hallway, is separated by that green, how we bring biophilic aspects into design, and the kitchen in the background. And here we can just see, Barcelona and the bay in the background. We worked really hard as well with trying to get rid of lighting and all the serviced elements. So everything like ventilation and AC sits between and behind the timber slats. In terms of materiality, we try to reduce the number of materiality. So in the bathrooms, for example, just as on the floor is a micro cement that goes inside to outside. It's a waterproof surface. It goes in the pool as well. And all the bathroom walls, shower trays, everything. And it's actually a really affordable way of doing it. So it goes into that pool. And what's really lovely about it is that I get messages like this from the client where they're saying that, I'm so in love with this house. And I have, like, on my WhatsApp, how we communicate these days, I got tons of these messages from clients, how they say how they love living in that space. A little video showing you how you're coming out into that space. And it's something unique about having that 180-degree sea frontage and view of the Mediterranean. Okay. And then I'm swiftly going to move to another house, which is in Essex. So this sits on a big open greenbelt land. The client came to us and they were moving out of London. They had 2 young children and were just about to have another one. And they wanted to create a family home, something that could be theirs for a long, long, long time. They had this idea of living in a pavilion in the landscape, almost like a Farnsworth house. But a pavilion has a sense of scale in a way, where if it gets too big, it loses that appeal. So we started by splitting the site into 4 quadrants. So we had an entrance quadrant, we had a service quadrant, we had a sleeping quadrant, and we had one where there was the main living spaces. That meant that you could only inhabit one at each time, which made the scale manageable. It also created a real clarity of how the concept worked. So the site started with these walls, which are made from a local stone in dry stone walling, defining each quadrant into which then we have living space, bedroom space, guests, and ancillary spaces. On that then is a series of roofs that either sit on the wall or they abut the walls. And it's a hierarchy between the walls as they go around. And that also creates the different heights in the so that, for example, higher in the living space. There's a 2-story chimney breast that goes through the space, and then have a little room on top, which is actually the client's study. So you can see the center of the plan with the piano. That's where you come into this entrance hallway, which is like a central space. You can relate that back to the Villa Rotunda we saw earlier in a way. And from there you can access the 4 different wings. So to the top of the page you have the north, you have the utility, plant room, gym. To the east we have a guest wing. To the south, facing east, you have the bedrooms. And to the west and facing south we have the living space. And we have a pool in front of the house. On the top floor we have what used to be a smoking room, but we can't smoke anymore, so it became a Negroni room. This is how you approach the house coming up the driveway. Because we were in green belt, it was really important that we created a low dwelling. So it always sits low against the tree line, so if viewed from a distance with the stone and the timber, it blends in really easily. We always work very closely with our visualizers to create really good representation of the architecture as we go through the process. And we're really proud of how we actually deliver those visuals, because I think that so often we see visualization that is a poor representation of the architecture, and then you see something that looks differently built. So this takes you in through the entrance, and you comes into that central space when you got a double height space with a staircase leading up. You have a fireplace in there, and you can then, looking up that way, you have the utility wing, and then you have the main living space coming into the kitchen and dining space. Just turning around the hallway. We work very closely in delivering interiors in the project. In this architecture that we produce, we find it very difficult to separate interiors from the architecture. So therefore we get very engaged in creating joinery, fixed joinery, for example. So this kitchen, it runs and continues all the way at the back of the house. So it connects into this space behind. At the top of the library, which is also a great space where the kids sit and do homework, right next to the kitchen. And then we have a separate living space, which is more of a grown-up space, which is used less often. And then also means that we can integrate fireplace, we can integrate storage, we can integrate TV, because there's always this fight between TVs, views, fireplaces. So we try to hide it behind the screens. There's a TV behind that screen, for example. And then all the kind of T points, we're trying to put not things on display all the time. And our clients are, our client here, for example, he has self-proclaimed OCD. He's very particular about his detail and how he wants to live. And he wants it really nice and tidy, so we can tidy these things away. Craftsmanship becomes really important as well. We work with joinery companies to create something that's going to last for a really, really long time. Outdoor spaces, how we connect to the outside, having covered areas for outdoor kitchens, outdoor spaces to sit. Very often we try to do it under roof as well, because we are in Britain, or you either need shading or you need wet protection, rain protection. And in the entrance courtyard, we have this little bay window that connects to the kitchen. Becomes a lovely framing when you're in the kitchen, you can come see out when people arrive and so on. It was very important for our client in this house to have a pool. How we were going to do that pool was great discussion. Most of the time, you end up with having a really ugly pool cover to keep the heat in. But we created we have a scissor lift in the pool that closes it off, so it lowers the bottom of the pool. And that's really highly insulated. So this pool is used all year round, and it works incredibly well. And it means that you can park it at, for example, a foot. So it's very useful for children and so on. Bit of an extravagance, but it stops it being something that's ugly in front of the house, because we are not in Spain after all. And finally, I'm just going to show you very quickly something that is a little bit different perhaps, which is a house we are doing in Finland. This is about an hour east of Helsinki in the archipelago. It's a fantastic, beautiful site. You've got all these stones that the inland ice has dropped off and plonked across the site. When we do projects, as I said in the beginning, it's really important for us to understand what it is that the client wants to do. So I went to Finland, for example. You stay there for a couple of days, you hang out with the client, you have a sauna and jump in the lake, you go out on the water, you sit and have lunch and dinner, and you drink some wine, and you're chatting about it. And I think that the way we approach architecture, when we are young and we go to School of Architecture, we learn to analyze things and draw diagrams and partie drawings and isolated structure and enfilade and all of these things we've done. But sometimes I think that as we get older, we have a whole wealth of knowledge in our heads. And I did this little sketch on site, and it's like I call it the divine download. And it is that somehow you can, everything the client has told you about the briefs, you talked about the brief, you got the site, you got the location, you got the orientation. Somehow your brain is this amazing piece of kit that can synthesize it all, and you can literally draw it out. You don't have to justify it because you know it's right. You can then post-rationalize it completely, and you can do all those diagrams if you want, but you're going to come to the same solution. So this house was for a client. This is a real legacy project. It's a client who, her dad has got a house very nearby. So, but she's lived in America her whole life, but she used to come back to Finland in the summers. So this was about creating a holiday home, a real legacy project. And they know that the family is going to change over the years. They've got children who are in the late teens now. They know that they're going to come back with children in the future, but they know that the house is going to go down in generation. The previous house has been there over 150 years. So we thought, how can we do this? Because it's going to sometimes be used by two people, sometimes it's going to be used by two different families and come and stay. So we deconstructed the stone, we deconstructed the house into bits. So we had a main house which had one bedroom. Then we had a house on the right-hand side, which was the bedrooms. And then one pavilion on the left, that was the studies. So you could come and stay and use it as you wanted to. You could come and just open up one building, or you could open up all of it if it was full. And then we had a little sauna building on another little island that just sits to the top of the page. So this is our response that we wanted to do, almost like a pavilion-esque architecture that sits like a pavilion in the landscape. To use Merket's word, we wanted it to sit very lightly in the landscape. So it sits on stilts. And this is the main building that has kitchen, living space, and one bedroom only. And this is really about that idea of luxury. The luxury here is about disconnecting from the world. It's coming from their life in America to come to Finland and reconnect with nature themselves. There is specific table for laying puzzles, for example. We talked about curating different book collections for the different houses. So when guests come and stay, there is themes that go through it. It's about spaces to pause and connect, and how we have the little sauna on the island, and it's a wood-fired sauna. It becomes ritual, and it becomes something that takes you away and makes you just chill out. It's about being part of nature, being able to experience that midnight sun, because it never really gets that's kind of as dark as it gets. And then 3-4 in the morning, you got the sunrise. So it's actually north facing, but we think it's going to work really, really well. And how we move through the landscape. And that takes us out. We have this little sauna building, as I said, on a little island that's accessed via a causeway. And then the final things I wanted to talk about is something I called the je ne sais quoi of buildings. I hope I spelled that right, because I'm not very good at French, but clients sometimes ask me, what is it? What are we trying to do? What is architecture? And as architects, every day we make hundreds, maybe sometimes we make thousands of decisions. It's about every line that we draw, every material, how they come together, how they touch or how they don't touch. And each one of those decisions, we're trying to make the best decisions we can, and they're all worth something. But together, all of those thousands and thousands of decisions are worth so much more. Together, it creates something that we can't put our finger on. You almost get it in this space as well. It's like you walk into a cathedral, you can feel it, how architecture impacts you. So in all of those houses that we work on, whether it's in Sweden or America, London, California, Sussex, Sweden, another Sweden, Spain, North London, Wales, we all trying to create that thing. And I received this text message from a client telling me what his experience of the je ne sais quoi of buildings is. You can't explain it. He's saying, like, I can't describe what it is. The architecture does something. It makes it easier to live. And I think that when I get feedback like that, I know that what we're trying to achieve, that je ne sais quoi of architecture, then we have succeeded. Thank you.